guide your journey into Cabernet Sauvignon magnificence. Hello, welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine, presented by Pick n Pay, and welcome to somewhere I came to slightly hesitantly because although the Serengeti Estate is one of my favourite golf courses, it's hosted the South African Open, it's got a great pedigree for a course that hasn't been open for that long, it's somewhere I can't actually play golf. I'm still limping around, I'm in my moon boot, I'm on my crutches. I thought, gee, if I see the golf course, it's going to be so frustrating. But you know what? There is something to take the sting out of not being able to play golf because it is an estate with a rather nice restaurant set within a beautiful little Italian-style piazza. It's called Mozzafiato, and amongst other things, it has a wine list, which I've spent the last little while perusing and will be making some selections from in the next little while. And I see some familiar wines. There's some Creation Sauvignon Blanc, although it's winter, it's a rather warm winter's day. The famous secateurs from Mr. A.A. Badenhorst. We had Ardi on the show not that long ago, but as it's winter, if you're feeling like some red, perhaps some Glencarlo Cabernet Sauvignon, there's some of the Rake's Touch of Oak Pinotage, a Toolbach favourite, or speaking of Toolbach, they got a fair bit of Krona by way of bubbles. And there's also some wine not on the wine list if you ask them nicely. You're splashing out and you feel like some Villafonte Series M, for instance. That's one of the gems they've got hidden in the rather cool wine cellar behind me. It sits within a beautifully appointed restaurant. It's got a really warm family feel, which is not unexpected for a family estate. That's the image and the feel that Serengeti has, and I'm looking forward to spending the next few hours here. It's not all I'm doing on the show this week, though. A little later I'll be heading down to Agulhas, down to a very quiet, slightly remote corner of South Africa's wine atlas, and meeting up with a giant bearded man called Pierre, who's both an advocate and a remarkable winemaker. But to start with, I go to another spot which, like this, has got Italian food on the menu. It's David Higgs's Saint. It's one of my favourite restaurants, and it's where I caught up with Tinashe Nyamudoka, a man with a terrific wine story, and importantly for this week, some brand new releases of the Kumusha wine that's doing so well all over the world. If you happen to follow a guy called Tinashe Nyamudoka on social media, you'll get both rather dizzy and slightly envious because every 8 minutes he seems to be somewhere else doing something enormously cool. If I look at your Instagram account, Tinashe, in the last little while, you've been watching Premier League football, you've been hanging out with sommeliers in Amsterdam, you've been traveling all over the place. If I think of when we first met at the test kitchen, and already then the Tinashe story had gone a long way, but just these last couple of years as your brand has taken off, it's been a dream come true, hasn't it?
Yeah, more than my wildest dreams, I'll say. But it's been fun, it's been exciting, and I think, I always say it's the stuff I was praying for. I always wanted to travel, experience different cultures, different food, taste different wines, meet, other people who enjoy wine as much as I do, and I'm experiencing and living the dream.
I suspect that the last stretch has been fueled by two particular areas. One of them is a rather celebrated documentary, which we'll talk about in a second, but also the expansion of Kumusha. It is your brand, the Zimbabwean roots brought to life here in South Africa, and it's a brand that's finding a home around the world. Yeah,
definitely. And in that period as well, it's taught me a lot about wine perception, wine drinking, wine appreciation, and as you take it back for me, I came into the wine world without any preconceptions, like pretty much raw, someone drinking wine. Then you get schooled into how you drink wine, how you perceive wine, which is good in a way if I want to be selfish. But then with my brand, it's taught me again that, wine is not just centered around professionals. To go global and to be enjoyed by people, it has to be decentralized, and you have to find people's comfort zones in terms of drinking wine. And with the Kumusha range, that's why I've actually broken it in 3 different ranges, where I would say the flagship or say is wines that I would enjoy, and probably my sommelier colleagues will enjoy, my friends in the wine industry will enjoy. the almost lifestyle range at the bottom end is, people who don't give a damn about where the grape is being grown, what yeast, but they still enjoy the purpose of wine. They still enjoy, the occasion of wine, not just with the snobbish part of it. So it's really taught me a lot and to appreciate every wine drinker.
And it's wine that is not just got a great following here in South Africa. There's now, I've come across people drinking it in America, people drinking it in the UK. And part of it is the story, because you've got a wonderful story. But that's only going to sell your first vintage. You've got to back it up with some proper wine.
Definitely. I think, I'm very excited when I see someone from Alaska, a place I always see on TV, really posting a Kumusha flame lily, and just to feel that the story and the love has traveled that width and breadth is probably the greatest satisfaction someone can ever have, especially if you're making wine. Like I said, really doing well in America. Recently came from a trip in the UK, already seeing back orders. In Holland, I was just there recently, people loving the wine, appreciating the story. And obviously closer to home, Zim, Kenya, Ghana. Yeah, it's just been exciting, Dan.
Tell me a little bit though about the documentary Blind Ambition. It's clearly amplified your profile and the profile of your fellow sommeliers. It's almost a love letter to wine, isn't it?
Yeah. It's some dubbing it. What's that Jamaican?
Cool runnings of wine.
Cool runnings of wine. Of which ours didn't have a winning end towards it, but I think it was just that realization and association of a community. We ended up as 4 top sommeliers in South Africa, enjoying wine, understanding wine in their own native language, and that's what we pretty much did. We were tasting wines, picking up Maroro, Matamba, Masao, and we really enjoyed it, like trying to associate wines with what we grew up eating, what our mothers cooked. So it culminated in us forming a Zimbabwean national team to go and compete in the blind championships in France. We went there first year, 2017, performed very modest, modest second from last, but we beat the Italians. Then I think it came to a realization of the directors were saying, hang on guys, okay, you're competing in the World Blind Tasting Championships, but you're coming from Zimbabwe. There's no history of wine. Is there any wine being grown in Zimbabwe? How did you end up here? And I think that the story then tracks back our roots and how we ended up in South Africa in the hospitality industry and how we ended up engaging in wine. So it's a beautiful movie. I've only watched it once on a small screen. And I'm excited to watch it on a big screen. And I know it's been a question of many, when is the movie actually coming to South Africa? But word is it's really coming in July. So probably 14th we're having the premiere, then by the end of July it will be out in cinemas. Beautiful movie to watch. So yeah, a lot of watch parties to look forward to.
We will keep you posted on Dan Really Likes Wine. It is the cinematic moment of the wine year. Blind Ambition comes to South African screens from, amongst others, a man who's making this Kumusha wine. You've got it in front of here, the 3 of them. Let's start with the Sauvignon Blanc, and as you pour some, tell me about this one.
So the Kumusha range now has probably 9. And this range I've brought is probably my middle range, where I try to be experimentative, or I try to find little pockets in South Africa where there's not much talk about it. But of course now the Sonderskloof has recently become on the South African map. I knew about this region my days back at the test kitchen when Trazan Bernard walked in with a Sauvignon Blanc from Sonderskloof, and I was really amazed by the character of the wines there, minerality, vibrancy, razor sharp acidity, and it really worked well with food in the test kitchen, and I always kept a keen eye on it. So when I wanted to have a Sauvignon Blanc, I wasn't a big Sauvignon drinker before I started making my own, so it had to be good. So I work with Willem Pina, who's farming at Hermanus Pietersfontein. So it's a small little ward where I think only 2 farms are farming grapes there. I only know of 3 people bottling wines under Sonderskloof. I'm the 3rd one, Trazan and Hermanus Pietersfontein. So it's really what I'm excited about.
First time I've had this particular wine. First time I've had a Sauvignon Blanc from you. I have had a Chenin Blanc from you before, though, because that was one of your starting points, the Breda Kloof, which is such a wonderful home of Chenin Blanc, isn't it?
For my thing, I think it's the most underrated wine region in South Africa. Oh,
No, you mustn't say this because their prices are fantastic. People like you say this, the prices are going to go
up. Yeah. I just find a lot of quality and value in the wines there, man. And I think that the people in the valley are just so modest.
They're good people, aren't they?
Very good people. And I'm excited working with all the winemakers there. I know them personally. I visited some of their wine farms and we interact quite a lot. And this Chenin Blanc, for me, I think the Breda River does it in its own way. They respect that they have quality fruit, longer hanging fruit, lovely acidity, lovely ripeness as well. And I think what they've done in the past is just to work in a lot of oak into it. But I see there's a realization they're really working the wines gently, using concrete amphoras, foudras, as we do in this Chenin. So this Chenin is coming from mostly Opstal grapes, which are in the valley. Then I get a bit of portion from our friend Elisma, right at Olifantsberg, where there's a bit of Malmesbury shell. It gives you a different mineral profile. And I think for me, Chenin was the most daring to make because there's a lot of delicious Chenin in South Africa, to be honest. And to make one that stands out really takes ability and skill. And for me, combining those two vineyards gave me the sort of Chenin I think gets appreciated.
Like if you're
sunshine in a bottle as well.
If you're getting grapes from Uti, then you're off to a good start.
Off to a good start as well.
But they still need to be made. And as we move on to the final wine, which is a red, as you pour it, give me a sense of how much of a role, how much influence you actually play in getting this wine into a bottle. It's all well and good to have this good-looking young Zimbabwean as the name behind it. But are you actually doing some of the making of this wine?
So I pick grapes, not all harvest period, but I generally know the vineyards I want to work with. I now know the vessels I want to work with, more or less the picking days where we pick. So Ati helps me on the picking and winemaking side, but where I'm heavily involved is selecting the barrels, putting my blends into bottle and really making them exciting. And all my wines are totally different from what Opstal makes or what the Breda Kloof makes. It's my perception of the wine drink I'm targeting. It's my perception of the food I want the wine to be enjoyed with, and that's why I put in the bottle. It's my first red and my type of drink. I'm more about elegance than power. I really shy away from the big 15%, 14.5%, because I want to enjoy two bottles. I just don't want to enjoy one glass. So for me, the Cape Cinso is that type of wine you feel bad about opening the third bottle because it's just going in gently and lightly.
It's a splendid selection, which is no surprise, and it sits in the broader space of just such a wonderful story. We've shared it before, we will share it again.
Awesome.
Because I love it. I can't wait to watch this movie. We're going to be doing plenty with you, I hope, in the build up to it.
Awesome.
But in the meantime, thank you for some lovely wine, and as always, some terrific company.
Always a pleasure, Dan.
I love the story of Tinashe Nyamudoka. Arrived in South Africa, didn't know a thing about wine, and now not just an acclaimed sommelier, but his Kumusha brand making waves right around the world. This is a perfect winter's day at Serengeti, and it's making up for the fact that I'm not on the golf course. The restaurant is a delight, and you've just had a look at the cellar. I'm going to head inside and check out the menu in a moment. While I do that, let's send you back down to the Western Cape and a guy who looks like Hagrid from the Harry Potter movies. By day, you'll find him in court as an advocate, but by night, he's a winemaker extraordinaire. Pierre Rabie and his Giant Periwinkle, even by South African wine stories, a pretty cool standard to set. One of my all-time favourite groups of stories, one I've just started reading to my children, the stories of Harry Potter. And if you've often wondered, what is Hagrid doing these days now that he's no longer guarding Hogwarts? Well, he's actually making wine in the Overberg under the assumed name of Pierre Rabie. Mr. Rabie, welcome to the show.
Well, it's actually doctor. I've got a doctorate in law, but yeah. So if you want to use titles, you use the right one.
Well, I do have to be careful what I say because you are actually a lawyer. You're an advocate, aren't you?
Yes, I am. Yeah, I practice at the Cape Bar as well. I do make wine. yeah, I have to practice some law to be able to afford to make wine, to have the luxury of making wine. Because as you know, in Afrikaans, it always say that hoe jy nou 'n groot fortuintjie, 'n klein fortuintjie maak as jy gaan koop vir jou 'n wynplaas. So, yes.
There is a very natural relationship between wine and the law, and I know this personally because my wife is a lawyer and she has a very fond relationship with wine, which she enjoys drinking. She doesn't have to make it though. How do you manage to juggle being an advocate in Cape Town with being out in this part of the world making the fantastic wine that you do?
Well, probably got to ask the attorneys that brief me how I do it. You know, yeah, since COVID, we've learned that we can consult via Zoom, Teams, other electronic platforms. A lot of my work is chamber bound as well. I'm not in court that often. Luckily, you don't have to see me that often. But yeah, so you can manage these things. It can be done. The harvest time is a bit hectic, but the rest of the year, yeah, winemaking is a chilled profession. All of these winemakers like Bruce, Jack, and Conrad, they're going to tell you how very hard they work the rest of the year. That's not quite true.
It's helped, I can see, also by your passion for wine, and it's not a new one. In fact, I think I've seen you lay claim to being a winemaker from the age of 9. Where did that passion for wine come from?
Well, yeah, it's this odd thing that my dad was the eldest, grew up on a wine farm between Worcester and Robertson. He didn't inherit the wine farm. The youngest son did. I don't know what he did to anger my grandmother. But in any event, gedane sake, soos hulle sê in Afrikaans. But I can recall many a summer holiday spending on this wine farm. And I was the eldest of all the grandchildren. I really didn't have a lot of friends there. And there was this one farm laborer's son. His name was Willempie. And Willempie and myself, we were like, playing like the whole day through in these hot summer days. And one day I said, Willempie, I want to make some wine. And Willempie said, no problems. He said his grandfather has made many mossakke, so he knows how these things work. And it's very easy. We just have to go into my uncle's vineyard, pick some grapes, and then stomp it, and it'll be wine. And I said, Willempie, this sounds this can't be. Why do they have this big cellar down the road? I mean, it just can't be. And he said, no, I must trust him. So we went into the garage, got a big container, pulled it into the vineyard, and we started picking these really ripe red muscadel grapes. They were probably like 27 or 28 bulling. They were going to make some sweet wine with it. So picked like a whole row. A lot of grapes, and we started stomping. And at that stage, my father on Sundays, he would allow us to have a little glass of wine with lunch, and then while we were stomping, I just took some of this juice and I tasted it, and it was the most horrible, sweet, brownish looking substance that I've ever tasted in my life. And I said, Willempie, this isn't wine. So Willempie tastes and he says, no, he concedes, this isn't wine. But no need to worry. He's going to check with his grandfather, what we're doing wrong, because, something's wrong. So he runs away to where he stays, he comes back, he says, no problems, this needs to ferment. We just need to find containers. And it was just when plastic Coke bottles had made their appearance on the scene. And I know my uncle had a shop on the farm, so they had a lot of these empty bottles lying around. We went to collect them. We filled probably 20 or 30 of these bottles, placed them against these whitewashed walls in Worcester, 40-degree heat. And then I went for my afternoon nap. At that stage, my grandmother believed when you were under 10, you had to take a mid-afternoon nap in the Worcester heat. I didn't agree with it, but I had to do it. So I can recall lying in bed and just waking up and getting one of the biggest hidings of my life. And these bombs that we had created that subsequently exploded against these walls. And naturally, my consultant, Willempie, was nowhere to be seen. Yeah.
And so began a wonderful journey into wine.
Yes, and my dad was an academic. I got him to make one barrel of wine. It was the most horrible wine that we both had tasted in a very long time. as was my first foray, or my first wine, not the one I made with Willempie, but in 2011 I made a Sauvignon Blanc that was also terrible. Only my mother could drink it. But yeah, so my dad made this barrel, and that would make me a 6th-generation winemaker. So I've still got bottles of wine that my grandfather made, and they're quite decent. They from the late 40s, and they really are nice.
You have taken that family tradition, you've brought it into Agulhas. I remember at the end of last year speaking to Melu Lambert, who'd been out here for a trip, raving about the area, raving about Giant Periwinkle. You must go and meet Pierre, go and hang out. There is, just in the last little while, I feel a real energy coming out of this area in terms of the rest of the world, understanding what you are capable of. What is it about Agulhas that is making wine, that is getting the world to sit up and take notice?
Yeah, I think the big thing here is, I mean, it's the terroir. It's this ability that we have to work with acidity, because our grapes have very natural high acidities and also very low pHs. So our wines should be able to last for many, many years. That's why I brought this 2019 Blanc Fumé from Giant Periwinkle, which at this stage it's so youthful still. It's unfortunately all sold out. The problem with making these small quantities, but you know, this wine is so fresh. It's alive, it's vibrant. I know Malu, in the great article she wrote about it, it's probably the nicest things that anyone has ever said about me. So yeah, I'm a big Malu Lambert fan. She said that I'm the architect of light because I work with acidity, and to her, vibrancy and life and light equals acidity in wine, which I can see, and it is something that brings life to wines, and it's something that we can do naturally here. We are allowed to add tartaric acid in South Africa, not in Europe, because of our warm climate, but we don't have to do it. We also don't do it with our whites at all. So it's that ability, that natural acidity, the low pH, and also the low pH gives you a bit of salinity, especially in the Sauvignon Blanc. So that's why you can taste like a sea taste, or a salty taste in the wines. It's actually the low pH, but also our wines are generally close to the ocean, most of them being, you know, under 10 kilometers from the sea. Yeah.
And they give you the opportunity to make this wine, which Melu, amongst so many others, has raved about. I'm starting to get the vision. I started with Harry Potter. I'm now seeing a John Grisham novel where this South African advocate / winemaker has this wonderful story to tell. What gives you more satisfaction, winning that big case and putting somebody in their place and getting justice, or bringing a bottle out of the cellar and realizing, you know what, Pierre, I've got this just right?
Well, firstly, it's not all about winning in law. That's what your advocate needs to tell you, and your lawyer as well. You can't always win. It's about doing justice between man and man, and that's what I want to do as an advocate. And my first allegiance will always be to the court. I am an officer of the court, and you know, one sometimes You always need to remember that, because there's a lot of pressure on you to perform for your client, and you always want to do that. You want to do your best. The client is paying you good money to do the job for him, and I always want to do my best for a client. But it doesn't happen often. But sometimes you will get the situation where, you know, tough decisions need to be made, and it's in law generally. It feels like you're always trying to undermine the other side or trying to defeat someone else. Whereas with wine, it's more a positive and a creative thing, where you create something to be enjoyed with others. And especially in South Africa and in this area, in the Agulhas Triangle where we are, the winemakers are a very closely knit society, and we generally help each other. And you know, we understand that if Rabie gets accolades, it's good for Strandveld as well. It's good for Bruce Jack as well. It's good for our area. So, you know, we all work towards a goal. It's something that's very rare in a lot of professions. and it's something that I really cherish as a winemaker.
I've picked that up. There's a very vivid sense of kinship to the people I've met in this area. There's also a sense of adventure behind the placid and laid-back demeanour you all appear to have that takes you into new spaces, has you experimenting with new wines. And that appears to be the case here, because as well as the Giant Periwinkle, which I'm going to have a glass of while you take me next door, there's a Magnum that has a slightly different label to it. Tell me about that.
Yes, in 2020, not the best year to start a new wine brand. My cousin and I thought, well, I mean, let's try something new. Let's try a new brand. Also, located in Cape Agulhas, and I make these wines not in the Periwinkle cellar. I make them in Le Monde cellar, where I rent some cellar space, and I work there closely with Hannes Meyer, who's the winemaker there, and also another American friend of mine, Trevor de Rosé, also someone that I'd suggest you meet. And he makes Lost Boy wines. Very interesting fella. Got a lot of tattoos. Yeah, and the girls really like him. He's very attractive, so yeah.
Sounds like you and me, really.
It does, eh? I mean, yeah. So old Trevor and Hannes and myself, we have a lot of fun making these Koerberg wines. Koerberg is a mountain very close to Bos, where the grapes are situated. And the interesting thing here is I only make Magnums. We only do Magnums, and if you don't like a Magnum, if you can't finish a Magnum, then Koerberg isn't for you. Magnums generally last longer, and it's to emphasize our area and the fact that our wines can age so very well that we put them in Magnums, and yeah, things are going well with Koerberg.
I love the philosophy. I've put a Magnum-specific rack into my cellar, so I'll be placing an order once we're done with lunch. But we need to have lunch first, and I want to finish this off because it is delightful, and learn some more about this wonderful story. So next time I'm down, I'm going to come pay you a visit in person. And until then, Dr. Pierre Rabie, thank you. And it's wonderful to see somebody who's managed to combine two such disparate passions but brought them together to form such a wonderful thread.
On the doctor thing, you're the first person that's actually used the title, because when I was academia, I didn't have the doctorate, so my students always called me Mr. The judges still call me Mr. They won't call you a doctor. So thanks for that, Dan. And it was really nice having a chat with you. And come and visit me at the Periwinkle cellar, and we can have more chats and drink some older wines there.
I would love to do that. Dr. Rabie, thank you very much.
Cheers.
Cheers. So that's Pierre Rabie, the advocate / winemaker. I'm not sure there are too many of those, making some lovely wine and with such passion, as you can see from behind that magnificent beard of his. I think he might even outdo Niels Verberg from Luddite as the finest beard we've ever had on Dan Really Likes Wine. I've built up something of an appetite over the course of our filming this afternoon, and having a look through the menu, there is the Italian feel, which is not surprising. I think some oxtail arancini do look rather good. There's a lovely pasta range, but with a slight difference. Lamb briedi pasta, or some pork belly, sun-dried tomatoes, whole pile of pizzas. But there's also a little touch of Asia to this. If you like some beef tataki or some ponzu roasted mushrooms, there's a lot to explore in what is just a really lovely, warm, engaging space. Throw in that wine cellar you saw a little earlier, and I think I found a great spot to see out the rest of my Friday. That does it for this week. Big thank you to Pierre and the team down at the Giant Periwinkle, and also to Tinashe for the time at Saint a little earlier. His story just gets better and better and better, and it's always a delight to be able to share it. Thanks to Mark Renwick and the team at Serengeti, and my friend Paula, who made some terrific food recommendations. We'll see you back on the show next week. Keep drinking South African wine, keep supporting it. We'll see you later. Goodbye.